Hey, I'm Tony. I am not going to talk too much about myself because you can Google me if you want to. You probably don't want to, that's fine. You are probably here to hear about my first indie game, unless you're here to hear about Amazon Lumberyard, in which case you're in entirely the wrong room. They're in room number 3. So, yeah, let's talk about my first indie game. It is a game called Binaries, which is kind of a bit of a failure, I guess. So what is Binaries? Binaries is a puzzle platform game. You control 2 characters at the same time using one set of controls. So when you press left, they both go left. When you jump, they both jump. It's kind of like playing 2 different Super Meat Boy levels at exactly the same time. It has this added little twist in it as well, that everything is color coordinated, so the blue character is only hurt by blue things, the orange character is only hurt by orange things, and it's also a game that you have almost certainly never heard of before right now, and that is kind of the problem, but sort of talking about that now will be kind of jumping the gun a little bit, so let's kind of go back to the start about Binaries. If the slide will move on. So way back in 2011, I was kind of learning Flash, I was learning ActionScript. I put together like a little platform game, and while I was making that to sort of learn ActionScript stuff, I accidentally cloned the player character so that there were 2 player characters in there, and that is essentially how the kind of core gameplay of Binaries came about. Back then, it was called Teal and Orangey. There were a lot of black and white games, so I'd picked Teal and Orange because there was kind of the whole thing with Hollywood movie posters are all teal and orange and all of that kind of stuff. And it was kind of a better time. There were kind of fewer games kicking about at the time, so I actually managed to get a little bit of coverage from it. It was on Rock, Paper, Shotgun. It was reviewed in PC Gamer, in the Observer, stuff like that. And it got like quite a few players on Congregate. And yeah, so it was kind of, when I went indie, I thought, I always kind of looked back at this, and it was a game that I'd kind of always wanted to sort of do a bit more with and build up a little bit more. And knowing that it had that coverage and that people had kind of responded quite well to it, I thought, okay, this is kind of, it's a good solid thing to sort of build on. I know that people kind of enjoy the core gameplay of it. And also it was a game that I was confident that I could kind of execute on almost entirely by myself. So Ant Workshop is like a one-man developer. I am that man. And Binaries, it's like, there's no complicated 3D models in this. There's no online networking or matchmaking or anything like this. It was like, it's all stuff that was kind of came in under my things that I thought that I could do. So I got started working on the rebuilding it into Unity. Development of it was actually like really pretty straightforward, to be honest. There's not that like I say, I had the core gameplay there. I knew what I was building. A lot of it was just in terms of like, okay, I'll take the old graphic style and kind of reimagine that as like I always wanted to keep it quite similar with like just the geometric shapes and that sort of thing, but maybe just do it a bit cleaner and like kind of rather than having it all pixely, because there's a lot of pixely indie games out there. And yeah, so it was kind of the difficulties at that point were basically just like, okay, how am I translating this across to Unity? It turns out that if you're making a platform game in Unity, the biggest problem that you're going to have is that Unity's 2D physics is absolutely appalling, and you're going to essentially rewrite a lot of it to make your characters feel good and feel like it's like a nice game. I was taking a lot of the kind of levels that already existed in the Flash version. It had 30 levels in it, so it's like, okay, I've got a lot of content that I can build out on. The Flash version was 4:3 aspect ratio, so I kind of had to focus on translating stuff into widescreen. And that was basically it, like building new gameplay features, so having things that weren't in the Flash one, like teleporters, moving platforms, the ability to have more than 2 characters, that kind of thing. But it was all fairly straightforward. And yeah, so like I said, the kind of the development stuff wasn't that difficult. In total, binaries cost, the development part of binaries cost £14,500. So I thought I'd maybe kind of just quickly break down kind of like where all of that money went down. So on this, right, yeah, sorry, my PowerPoint's been a bit weird. It kind of just muddles up all the sides. So ignore that binaries is now available on Steam and that it is coming soon to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And don't go to that URL. Definitely don't do that. So yeah, so the development costs, like I said, £14,500. The vast bulk of that was kind of my own wages. I'm not one of those guys that will stand here and say, I made my game and it cost me nothing, because I do value my own time. Like I said, like I've got a house, I've got a mortgage, I need to actually pay myself. The other stuff, code support. So although I'd kind of wanted to do a lot of the game myself, there were bits that I wasn't really that comfortable with. I'm a designer by trade. So there's things like Steam's DRM, like checking whether players actually own the game or not before it'll let you run it, having online saves, like the cloud saving stuff in Steam, and also because it's quite a time-based game, like people are kind of trying to get better their scores and that kind of thing. I wanted it so that the save data was obfuscated, so people can't just like really easily go in and kind of cheat themselves new high scores. So that was kind of, the code support was essentially like a month of of an actual coder's work, kind of doing that sort of stuff for me. Localization was through a company called Universally Speaking. They were fantastic. I was super happy with their stuff. They were incredibly quick, and they were also like really paid attention to what was going on. So when I got them to do the Steam store descriptions in like different languages, they actually went and looked at the store page in those different languages after I'd updated it, so they could see that everything was actually like fitting into the text boxes. And in the cases where it wasn't working, they like provided me with new translations free of charge. So that was really cool. And then the last little sort of sliver there is art consultancy. And now this was about halfway through development. I'd wanted to get like an art director that I know, a good friend, and basically sent him a build of the game and said, look, this is what it looks like at the moment. What can I do to this to kind of punch it up a bit? What can I do to make it look a bit better? And they provided me with like a whole bunch of suggestions on like, okay, clean this stuff up, make sure the line, like you're going for like this kind of clean look, make sure the lines are sort of super slick on it, pump the bloom up a bit so it's like a bit more vibrant, that kind of thing. My kind of biggest regret with all of this side of stuff is that I got the art consultancy too late, like way too late. I think ultimately it would have been better to spend that money right at the start and basically get that same guy looking at the Flash version and go, right, here's the Flash version. If you were reimagining it now as a modern game, what would you do instead? Rather than kind of getting them to suggest like ways of kind of like just bandaging up what I'd already done. So yeah, it was kind of, I think I should have done that a lot earlier. And then, so the other thing that you'll notice is missing here is audio, which, given that we've just had an audio talk, should probably better talk about audio a little bit. I got really kind of lucky with the audio side of stuff, I think. When I worked at Rockstar, I'd worked with this guy called Will Morton, who's absolutely fantastic, but then he'd left Rockstar and set up his own company doing freelance work. And I basically got chatting to him and said, look, I'm working on this game. Are you interested? He said, well, to be honest, my company, we do freelance stuff for AAA. We've got more work than we can possibly fit in, and we're quite happy with that side of things. But me personally, I'm really wanting to get involved in more indie stuff. So it didn't actually end up coming through his company. It went straight through him. And like I say, I got quite lucky in that he's also willing to work for revenue share, so there was no upfront cost for the development, which is really good. And he's also like he's one of those audio guys. I was a bit worried that he might just kind of like dump the music on me and kind of go, right, here's your audio files, I'm off, see you later, wait for my revenue to come in. But he was really involved in the whole, like in the audio all the way through, and kind of really active with suggesting kind of new changes and things like, so the game's got like a dynamic soundtrack, so as you're doing really well, like the music kind of like adds extra layers onto it and kind of like really pumps up, and as you're dying, the music like really kind of settles down and kind of gets out of your way. And all of that dynamic soundtrack stuff, that was all his idea. And even down to stuff like the two trailers, he wrote entirely new musical tracks for them, which I wasn't expecting, but it was fantastic. So yeah, I mean, and that basically kind of, I think that wraps up pretty much the development side of binaries. Like I say, it was fairly straightforward, there was no particular difficulties. And once I'd got that prototype, like the new sort of prototype built in Unity, that took a couple of months, and then I started to think about approaching publishers with it, because there's like a lot of people these days that call themselves indie publishers. This is a selection of the ones that I approached with binaries. I went to a lot more than this. So yeah, I thought, so I've always had this kind of thought of, obviously I'm just one person, I'm unknown indie, really. If I can get a publisher on board, then, I mean, obviously, if they would pay for development, that would be fantastic, but realistically, I don't think that's going to happen that much. But what I really wanted was their kind of marketing help, because I have always had this thought that it's like, look, if Team 17 send the press release out going, hey, we've got this new games coming out, that is going to get a lot more attention and a lot more articles are going to get written about it than like literally just some unknown indie guy going, hey, there's this new game, and like, no matter how exciting I write about, like how exciting I write an email about the game, literally just getting people to like click and open that thing in the first place, it seems to be pretty difficult. I don't know, maybe other people find it a lot easier than I do. So yeah, so I approached a bunch of these publishers. I came to Develop last year, had meetings with a load of them, went to Interface, which is a one-day kind of speed pitching event that Intent Media run. And then I emailed, like for the ones that I couldn't get face-to-face meetings with, I kind of scoured their websites to find like who I need to email to pitch stuff at them. And so for each publisher I was talking to, I was basically sending them a package of, there was 2 minutes of gameplay footage, there was the actual prototype itself, and there was a PowerPoint, like but it was quite a small PowerPoint. There was, I think, 6 slides in total. It was basically like an overview of the game, a bit about the sort of development budget, expected budget, development timeline, a little bit about like the Flash version to kind of try and big up, like, look, people have been into this in the past, and like a little bit about the company as well. And so every time that I sent this stuff to people, it was always in, I created like a new Dropbox folder per publisher, dumped all the materials in there, and then like send them a bit.ly link, because then you can actually track which publishers are even clicking on your link and even going and looking at your materials. And this, yeah, it seemed to go all right. Like, I got some decent responses. I think that one of the big sort of mistakes that I made was that the 2 minutes of gameplay footage was literally just gameplay footage. It was kind of like edited together gameplay footage. It wasn't a trailer. It wasn't punchy or showy enough. And in particular, a problem that Binaries has is the sort of dual character control system is actually quite difficult for people to understand from just watching it on video. Like, when people are playing it, they get it immediately. But if you're watching someone else play it, like, so if you're watching the trailer, or if you're, even if you're stood behind someone, like at a show or an event watching them play, you're never really watching the controller in people's hands. So people don't get the whole idea of it's like literally you're controlling these two people just with one stick. So I think the kind of the video maybe didn't really sell the game well enough. You had to, like, even to get that kind of understanding of what like the sort of USPs in the game actually are, you had to either read the deck or play the demo. And yeah, so In the end, I got quite a few sort of like interested noises off publishers, and got some really good feedback off them. So yeah, I'll kind of go through the bits of feedback. So there's kind of three main bits of. So like I said, PowerPoint is just, it keeps putting this slide in between all my other slides. So definitely just ignore this slide if it keeps popping up. So there's kind of like three bits of main feedback. So the first one was that the name's bad. So at the time, I was still pitching it as Tealy and Orangey. Tealy and Orangey is a really Googleable name. It's really easy to get your Google alerts coming up for that one. The problem is, it turns out that, well, there's several problems with it. First off, it makes people expect like a kind of 90s cutesy buddy platformer sort of thing. Like something about Tealy and Orangey makes them expect it's going to be a couple of rabbits or like some vegetables with googly eyes on them or something like that, like proper like rare sort of Banjo-Kazooie kind of stuff. And then the other problem that I'd never figured out by myself is it turns out a lot of people do not know that teal is a colour. Which does, at that point, the entire kind of premise of it sort of, and that the name is meant to be selling it, sort of falls really flat. And though I did have one event that I was at showing the game off, an artist sat there playing it for about 5-10 minutes. They said, like, yeah, this is really cool. Yeah, Tealy and Orangey. Yeah. You do realise that the blue that's in the game, that is not the colour teal, right? That is just blue. And it's like, man. So yeah, so basically at that point, kind of had to just change the name. It got make it a lot better. The second bit of feedback was, again, kind of down to the graphic stuff. It's like, this is not next gen enough, and that is a direct quote that a publisher in 2015 was still using the phrase next gen to refer to current generation consoles, I ask you. I mean, I guess that it is, to a certain degree, it's a problem with the kind of game that it is. It's like, it's a static screen platformer. There's quite a lot going on in terms of like detail of the level design, but that means that I wasn't confident putting like a lot of extra detail into the artwork and kind of making it quite complex. There's no scrolling in the game because you have to be able to have both the characters and the sort of surroundings visible at all times. So it's like you can't do anything particularly nice with any kind of scrolling or that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's like I think the game now is it is better looking than the version that I was sending around to publishers. Like I still took this kind of thing on board, and like I say, I got like this the art consultancy to sort of help out as well. But ultimately, I mean, it's not a game that is going to be making like PlayStation Neo sweat or anything like that, right? It is what it is. And the final bit of feedback was that the difficulty curve was totally all to whack. And this really struck home. Developed last year, I was sat watching a publisher play the game, and weirdly enough, it was Simon Byram from Curve that figured out that the difficulty curve wasn't right. And he was playing it, and there's a bunch of different challenges in binaries. Like some levels are really twitchy, some levels are kind of puzzly. You've got to figure out slowly work your way around to the exit. Some levels have no hazards in them whatsoever. And people find different parts of the game easier or harder. And this really meant that it's like I was watching Simon play, and he was playing a level that other people were just sailing through. Like I'd had it at events and literally watched a 4-year-old child like nail that level without any problems. I didn't mention it to him at the time. So this was kind of like a thing for me. Like, so at the time, the game was completely linear. You got one level. When you pass that level, you get the next level presented to you. If you can't pass a level, that is it, basically. You're stuck at that point. And this bit of feedback, actually, it resulted in like a bit of a design rethink, and one of the things that I'm actually like most proud of in the game. So it's actually, the game's now it's got 101 levels in this kind of honeycomb layout map. And what happens is, as you complete a level, so if you've like the sort of filled in circles, there are completed levels. And as you complete a level, you unlock all of the levels that are surrounding it. So it lets you kind of pick and choose your own kind of route through the game, what level you want to do next. And if you ever get stuck on a level, you can kind of come back to the map, and you can see here, it's like the player's got about half a dozen unlocked levels. So it's like you have, how it is now, you have to get stuck in a lot of different places before you like completely stop making progress in it whatsoever. So yeah, it's like I got that feedback from the publishers. I got a bunch of interested noises from the publishers. A lot of kind of like Magic 8 Ball says, ask again in a few months, which I kind of always sort of thought was like maybe they're just being polite there, to be honest. I don't think that they really mean that. And after kind of about 6 months of chasing up different publishers about it, I just had this feeling like, right, the game's actually coming along really well. It's not that far off being finished. I just need to make a decision about this. So I decided to self-publish it. And self-publishing is, I mean, pretty scary stuff. People say, like, making a game's hard. Some people say finishing a game is harder. I think self-publishing is really hard. I'm no expert at it. I am learning stuff about publishing literally every single day. I'm going to kind of give you like some kind of little bits and pieces that I have picked up, but this is absolutely not any kind of definitive guide whatsoever. So obviously, self-publishing stuff for a PC game, you're kind of thinking like, right, I need to get this on Steam, right? And when you're thinking about Steam, you're thinking about Steam Greenlight. So you're thinking like Steam means Steam Greenlight, right? And so indie developers hate Steam Greenlight. There's a lot of really high quality games that seem to get kind of stuck in there. Somehow a lot of absolute rubbish manages to get through anywhere. It's really quite disheartening. You can tell how bad it is because of literally like the number of Gamma Sutra articles that have been written about it. Like there are so many different articles of like my top secrets to Greenlight success, how to get your game through Greenlight in just 3 days and all that sort of stuff. I literally have one tip for Steam Greenlight, and that is if anyone is trying to tell you how to get through Steam Greenlight, they are a liar and they don't know how to get through Steam Greenlight. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Gabe Newell does not know how to get a game through Steam Greenlight. I don't think that that is something that he does. There is no sort of checklist of items that if you fill in that checklist, you will definitely get yes votes on Greenlight. And even if there was, there is no number of votes that you need that will get you through Greenlight and get you past. Literally, all you can do, put your game on there and wait. And keep promoting it to people, keep pushing your game all the time, and eventually you'll get through. And you kind of need to get through. I mean, Steam is brilliant when you're there. Well, I say brilliant. It's pretty good when you're there. 90% of my sales come from Steam, which obviously leaves like another 10%. So this is basically my breakdown of like storefronts. So yeah, like I said, I've got 90% of Steam. I found it quite interesting. So I always thought that the Humble store would be kind of like was sort of the second tier below Steam. But for me personally, I found like the Mac App Store is outselling it 4-1. I've always had the approach with binaries that like, look, if I'm going to self-publish this thing, I'm going to put it on as many different storefronts as I can. I know some people where it's like, oh, I've got it on Steam and that's enough. For the amount of time that it takes to sort of sign the contract and set up a store page for your game, like in all these different other places, it's like, as long as you're getting a few sales off those places, I view it as like this is just other places where people can accidentally stumble across my game. And there are fewer games on all of the other stores, so the chances of people actually stumbling across it seems a bit higher to me. I mean, every storefront that Binaries is on, it has sold at least one copy. Really? That's only 25 minutes. I'm being told time. Is it because the other guy overran? Right. So we're going to go quite fast through the rest of this. So the storefront stuff, My approach on storefronts even goes as far as there's a physical shop that is in Edinburgh where I approached them and said, hey, you sell all of this like local artwork and stuff like that. Do you want to start selling games as well? They said, yep. So you can actually go into a physical shop and buy a Steam code. And also consoles as well. I've got a friend that's been doing my console ports for me. He's James Parker from Groundshatter. He's doing a talk at 2 p.m. tomorrow, which would be well worth going to. What, sorry? 12:15 tomorrow, apparently. Yeah, stop. I can't do that joke anymore because I've run out of time. So yeah, marketing. People say that self-publishing, finishing a game's hard. Self-publishing a game is harder. Marketing, I think, is really horrifically hard. I don't understand marketing either. My marketing budget, so this is kind of a breakdown, so you can, if you remember back, you'll see that my marketing costs have been about $4,500. I wish I had a lot more money to spend on marketing. I don't think that this is a good split. I think you should be kind of a lot more 50-50. My development costs, my marketing costs have basically, like the big ticket items have been, I showed at EGX Rezzed and I employed someone to do my marketing for a 6-week period over launch. Getting that person to do that, I think, really helps because at the point where you're launching a game, you've got so much stuff going on, you've got a lot in your head. Having someone else that is kind of handling all of that, okay, these are the YouTubers that we need to contact, these are the press that we need to contact, keeping on top of like your social media stuff, that was really helpful. EGX Rezzed was really quite good for me. The game had just come out that week, which that was why I launched it when I did, because I kind of wanted to go to Rezzed and be able to say to people, play this, it's fun, look, if you go and buy it right now, there's a 10% launch discount on, because especially at something like Rezzed, like a lot of people are basically just there kind of showing games that aren't available to buy yet. Rezzed was also good in the sense that I got featured in the Rock Paper Shotgun room, and I got the game got picked as being one of the top 20 games by attendees, which was really, really nice. Like, it's always nice to get that kind of validation that people are enjoying it. The downside, I think, I didn't make the most of the sort of press opportunities. I didn't approach press before the event, to sort of set up interviews or anything like that. I foolishly thought that people would just be walking the show floor and I'd be able to catch people. That happens to some degree with some of the smaller YouTubers, but kind of not to a degree that you would actually want. So around launch, we did some social media stuff with competitions for people to kind of win Steam keys. We had this thing of photoshopping the blue and orange circles into unusual places. What I learned from this was that unless you have a big, active, really engaged fan base already, people are not going to spend 5 or 10 minutes doing daft Photoshop competitions for you. Literally, if you're trying to build up a player base at the time, I think the most you can ask for is people to retweet and like tweets and stuff like that. I think once you've got that player base and people are really into your company and your game, that's when you can start trying to do this sort of stuff. What else have we got? YouTubers. So people always say YouTubers, that's kind of the direction you need to head in. Obviously, the traditional press is dead. All the kids listen to YouTubers telling them to gamble, so definitely go in that direction. I think that it's difficult. It got to a point already where it's difficult to get attention from YouTubers. I found that we got quite good results from going for kind of local, smaller YouTubers. So I'm based in Edinburgh, so I basically found a bunch of Scottish YouTubers and said to them, look, here's a game made in Edinburgh, do you want to cover it? And I got a lot more positive results out of that than just from randomly firing stuff out. So maybe that would be something that you could try. You could probably try it with Scottish ones. I don't know whether they actually ever bother checking where the game really comes from. And to be honest, once you all move up to Scotland to stay in the EU, I'm not sure whether it'll work that well or not anyway. So yeah, I am on time now. I was kind of cruel about binaries at the start. I called it a bit of a failure. Ultimately, I don't think that is that true. At the end of the day, it has still sold over 800 copies, so that's like 800 people playing my game, which is really cool. It's got 96% positive Steam reviews, so that, again, that's validation that people are enjoying it. And it's not been a failure because I have learned a lot of stuff about like marketing, self-publishing, developing stuff, contracts with people, all of that kind of stuff. And I think the other thing that I've learned is really just push your game at people at literally every opportunity. So Binaries, there's this game called Binaries, right? It is available now on Steam, and it is coming soon to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Playbinaries.com. Thank you very much. And there's a sticky thing here that I am stuck to.